Straightforward conversations, no filters, beyond the headlines, just the facts. This is the Newsmaker. Thank you for joining Newswatch Plus. I'm Tristan Udalo. President Bongbong Marcos retains his economic managers but replaces some cabinet members and heads of some agencies after he sought a sweeping courtesy resignation. Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin remains on board, but this changes happening midway into the term raises more questions than answers. An administration in crisis mode or a strategic reset? Today's Newsmaker, former Presidential Spokesperson Edwin Lacierda. Sir Edwin, thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon, Tristan.
Okay. Sir, simulan na po natin, no? Given yung nangyari nung Friday, nag-press con si Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin to give some update. But for you, sir, when a president asks his entire cabinet to submit courtesy resignations, what does that tell you about the level of trust and confidence in his official family?
I think, first of all, I think it is in response to the results of the midterm elections. That is not a good referendum result on the part of the administration. And therefore, the strategic move of the president was to acknowledge the shortcomings. And one of the ways to acknowledge the shortcomings is, first of all, there was an interview with Tunying Taberna saying that the government seems to be not responsive to the concerns of the people. And this is now the strategic decision, a visible manifestation of telling the people that we are going to do better. And one of these ways is to revamp the cabinet. So I think, like you mentioned, it's a strategic reset. And also you asked if it was a response to a crisis. I think it can be both. And so by changing, or at least there's a revamp that happened, the Marcos administration is telling the people, look, we're going to change the ways that we've been delivering our services to you, and you can expect a better response from the administration.
Some say,
but actually what it will visibly result to, it has yet to be seen.
Okay, but some say this is not a simple reset as it is a purge. Is this a common thing, sir, in every administration based din po sa inyong mga experience?
Well, insofar as the Aquino administration is concerned, we had very few cabinet members that were replaced. No? But I think the one with the huge replacement factor was during the time of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, where there were a number of cabinet members who really left, like the Hyatt 10, and plus some other concerns, which are also in response to a crisis at that time. So this is not a very common thing. In the time of President Erap Estrada, there was also a revamp of the cabinet. And I think I spoke to someone who used to be a member of the Erap cabinet. The way that President Estrada did the revamp was they revamped the cabinet, but told the economic team that I am leaving the economic management in your care, in your stead. So advise me on how do we move the economy. In the case of this administration, we don't know yet the basic effects of this revamp, except for saying that they are going to do performance, they're going to improve the performance, they're going to weed out incompetence and remove graft and corruption. So we don't know yet, but it's really something that is not common. It's common in other administrations, but not during the time of President Aquino.
Okay. You know, the economic team stays, but other posts are still under review, no? Sabi nga po ni Executive Secretary Bersamin, in the next few days or weeks, malalaman natin kung sino-sino pa ang papangalanan. But given na inuna yung economic team, sir, what could be the messaging behind this of the administration?
Maganda yung mensahe dito na maintain yung economic team, no? Because I think if recall, there was a statement from Makati Business Club. Some financial analysts were worried about the uncertainty it creates if you revamp, no? But it so happened that the president decided to preserve the economic team. So in effect, the economic managers were maintained, sending a signal to the business community and to the foreign investment community. Don't worry about the economic direction of the country. it still will be as good as where it was before. So it's an assurance to the economic drivers of the country that what's working before this revamp will continue to work.
Okay. But given yung current composition, yung mga in-announce po na pangalan, no? So, economic team, si ES Bersamin, and then may mga nagpalit-palit po ng posisyon. So, from DOE, si Secretary Popo Lotilla, pinalit sa DENR, and then si DENR Secretary Tony Yuloy Saga ay pinagpahinga muna, quote, and then si Secretary Acuzar ng Housing and Human Settlements. But sir, sa ngayon, wala pang inanunsyong bagong mga pangalan. Do you hope that the Marcos administration would consider adding new breeds or kumbaga mga bago naman po dito sa listahan ng cabinet? Kasi ang current announcement parang nagpalit-palit lang din or yung iba nagstay nga po sa kanilang posisyon.
I think mahalaga talaga na, in fairness to the Marcos administration, prior to the revamp, there were a number of new cabinet members who were fairly recently hired. For instance, Secretary Angara, Secretary Aguda of the ICT. So there were fairly new ones that have been replaced prior to this. No? But of course, you would like to see new faces joining the administration. Kasi parang, okay, nagbalansa lang kayo, so anong effect nun? But this is not to denigrate, for instance, Secretary Popo Lotilla, who's done a good job in the Department of Energy. Maybe there's a felt need to address the concerns in the DNR sector. But by and large, hindi rin siguro maganda kung kayo-kayo lang, nag-musical chairs lang kayo. Sana magdagdag talaga ng mga bagong mukha na magbibigay ng signal na yes, we're serious in introducing new faces, new ideas. Diba? When you bring in new faces, you almost always bring in also new ideas. So that's something I hope that President Marcos would consider as he continues to announce a decision of the entire cabinet if there's going to be any new faces. That's something I'm sure that the business side, the public at large would welcome.
Mr. Lacierda, is this shakeup more about performance or politics, especially nga po since the administration has admitted that the people have spoken in the midterm polls and with the 2028 presidential elections just 3 years away?
It can be both, but I think more tactically, it is a result of the elections. Because by and large, who was removed? Secretary Acuzar was removed. They say that he was underperforming, but Secretary ES Bersamin mentioned so many millions of homes were committed to be built. He only built so few. But that's the only instance where ES Bersamin mentioned something about in relation to performance. In the case of Secretary Loizaga, she is a known environmentalist anyway. So the reason cited for her being replaced was she needed to take a rest. So it's sometimes you wonder if it's really about performance, because where are the rest? I mean, all the rest are new. For instance, Secretary Vince Dizon is new and is doing a good job. Secretary Henry Aguda is new also and is well versed with the ICT. And the only one that was moved was Secretary, at least for now, Secretary Popo Lotilla, who in his previous position was doing a yeoman's job of handling the energy. So it's really more of I'm not sure if it's really performance. I don't even know, because the spokesperson said walang puwang sa gabinete ang mga tamad at ang mga corrupt. So, sino ba yung corrupt dyan na tinatanggal nyo? Akala ko kung may ganyung salita ang spokesperson, may implication na meron kayong miyembro ng gabinete na hindi natiwali, na hindi maayos. So, sino dyan? There's no mention. So, the statement itself does not align with the replacements, appointments that were announced.
Okay, and sabi nyo nga po parang iba-iba yung messaging, no? Because nung tinanong rin si Executive Secretary Bersamin on may issue ba ng corruption doon sa mga naalis or pinagpahinga, quote-unquote, sabi niya naman parang wala pong issue ng corruption but more baka ang tingin niya is underperformance. And yung ibang mga nilipat din naman po ay hindi rin, kumbaga parang wala naman din pong narinig na issue ng corruption. So medyo iba-iba po. Dapat ba maging malinaw yung parameters on why the Marcos administration or why President Marcos will be replacing this official?
Correct. Agree ako sa iyo doon, Tristan. No? Medyo mukhang hindi maliwanag kung ano yung dahilan na tulad ni Secretary Popolotilla, nilipat siya sa energy sector department to environmental, hindi dahil hindi siya performing sa Department of Energy. And maraming magsasabi na si Secretary Popolotilla, matagal nang ano yan, kabisado niya ang energy sector, so hindi mo masasabing underperforming siya. Nilipat siya sa DNR para makapagpahinga si Secretary Loizaga. Hindi sinagot ang tanong na underperforming ba siya. So tama ka na yung messaging hindi masyadong klaro, parang hindi medyo handa ang administrasyon sa mga dahilan kung bakit magpapalit or magre-revamp. Diba? May mga haka-haka na may papalit ng isang malaking secretary para hindi lang mapahiya, i-revamp yung buong cabinet. So, it's really not very clear as to the purpose of the revamp. We know the purpose of the revamp, but the actual implementation of the revamp does not coincide with the recent side. And so that makes a little bit of a wonderment on the part of the public, what really was the true reasons for the revamp. But nonetheless, it sends a signal that there's a strategic reset. And so hopefully that would send confidence to the business sector and to the public at large that this government has promised to be more responsive. And hopefully they will be more responsive to the needs of the public.
And we will see, no, sir, kung sa mga next announcement ay talagang magkakaroon ba ng overhaul ng mga officials kung may talagang papalitan. But allow me to jump to another topic because prior to the announcement of the cabinet revamp, in a recent podcast interview ni President Marcos, he floated the idea of reconciling with the Dutertes. So I just want to get your take on this move. Is this genuine or just for the optics?
You know, in politics, there's a saying, Tristan, that politics is addition. So you don't want to necessarily court more and polarize the country. First of all, from a country basis, it's not good for the country to be polarized because it creates so much chaos. It creates uncertainty, and that becomes a cause for concern for our foreign investors who are coming in, and also for our domestic investors. Are we expecting some chaos for the next 3 years? So what the president, I felt, did was to send an olive branch to the Duterte family, in which, by the way, that was unsolicited. He really genuinely thinks that it would be good for the country. The question is not so much the offer. The offer was noble, was gallant on his part. And maybe perhaps it's also an acknowledgement of the failure of the administration to gain a majority of the Senate votes in the midterm elections. That really shows he's been hurt a bit in the midterm elections. No? Okay. So, and if you're able to do reconciliation with the family of Vice President Duterte, why not? The question now is, knowing that he has become no longer that invincible. Why should I take it, especially if Vice President Sara Duterte is undergoing an impeachment trial? So maybe the best signal, I suppose, if you really want to offer an olive branch is, what do you intend to do with the impeachment trial? Do you want this to continue? So it's really, I suppose, the family of Vice President Duterte would show a more visible sign of reconciliation because nag-unite na sila dati. Nagkasiraan. So malalim na yung sugat. So, and how does President Marcos have a more visible, tangible sign of reconciliation on the part of uniting the political forces in the country? Yeah, that's something that we would like to see from President Marcos and also a response from Vice President Duterte.
Actually, Sir Edwin, that's my next question. Given the fallout between President Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte, is there a chance for a Uniteam 2.0 or is that coalition beyond revival?
I think it's pretty difficult. Realistically, with so much has been stated by both sides, not necessarily by President Marcos, but by allies of both sides, and especially, at least Vice President Duterte was very direct in attacking the president. President Marcos has not directly attacked the Vice President herself. So that's where, do you think there's a possibility of reconciliation in the universe of possibilities it is, but given the acrimonious statements by both sides, it's going to be pretty hard for both to come up with a unit team 2.0. But if that happens, we'll see. But it will again. But who will take the upper hand? That's a question. Will Sara Duterte agree to be again the partner, the junior partner? So those are questions that both sides would have to decide. But I think it's pretty remote for them to do that because of the acrimony between the two parties.
Yeah, and what is your take po on the impeachment or the impact of the impeachment trial of Vice President Duterte leading to 2028? Could this trigger a sympathy vote considering also that her father is in jail in the Netherlands?
Well, looking at the mathematical calculation, you only need 9 votes to acquit the respondent in an impeachment case. So you already, since the side of Vice President Duterte already in the last midterm elections garnered 5 votes, he only needs 4 votes among the incumbents. So the question, her chances of being acquitted have risen dramatically. But again, we don't know. But will it create a sympathy vote? It depends on the evidence that will be presented during the trial. So we don't know the evidence. The only evidence that we've seen so far were the evidences presented in the Quadcom hearing. So that is something that we will see first, whether the prosecution will be able to successfully present all the evidence that could convince not only the senators, but also the public at large that Vice President Duterte warrants conviction. Short of that, I think it will be very, very hard to convince the public that she committed an impeachable offense. So it's up to the prosecution. So they should really present a very good case and present good evidence against the Vice President in the impeachment court to convince the senators that the evidences warrant a conviction.
Okay, but Mr. Lacierda, given yung looming impeachment trial and yung current situation ni former President Duterte, a Pulse Asia survey conducted from May 6 to 9 shows majority of respondents trust pa rin the Duterte. Sabi po dito sa survey ng Pulse Asia, may big trust. In terms of big trust, si President Marcos nasa 32%, si Vice President Sara Duterte nasa 50%, while si former President Rodrigo Duterte ay nasa 63%. So parang how do you assess itong ganitong mataas pa rin ang number despite yung mga pinagdadaanan po ngayon ng Duterte family as compared to President Marcos na ito po yung parang kalahati halos yung numbers niya kay former President Duterte pa kung ikukumpara.
Right. Although malaki ang kumpiyansa ng taong bayan kay former Pangulong Duterte, the fact is that the impeachment trial will not cover the situation of President Duterte. So insofar as the public is concerned, the impeachment case will focus narrowly on the alleged acts committed by the Vice President that would warrant her conviction. So doon lalaro ang kaso. Doon lalaro ang boto kung kaya bang i-convict or i-acquit ang Vice President. So doon lalabas yan talaga sa trial ni Vice President Sara sa impeachment case. No? Ganyan din rin naman nangyari sa impeachment ni Chief Justice Renato Corona noong panahon namin. So talagang depende sa ebidensya yan. At saka while May 6 to 9 will show the trust ratings of the 3 personalities you mentioned. Again, we always say in surveys that surveys are a snapshot in time. So we don't know what happened. May trial na, mag-iiba ba ang ihip ng hangin, makukonvince ba ang publiko na hindi, may ebidensya ang laban kay Vice President Duterte or hindi, kulang ang ebidensya laban kay Vice President Duterte. At doon din malalaman din ng mga senador yung damdamin eh. Madadala rin siya kahit papaano, constituent sila yung taong bayan eh. So depende nga doon sa depende doon sa mga ebidensya ilalabas ng prosecution ng impeachment.
Okay, last two questions, Sir Edwin. Looking ahead to 2028, given the encouraging results of the midterm elections, should Senators Bam Aquino, Kiko Pangilinan, Risa Ontiveros, and Leni Robredo, and Mayor Leni Robredo begin discussing a unified presidential ticket this early?
I think so far as the election, the yellow and the pink forces, I think it reinforced their strength. During the presidential elections of 2022, Vice President Leni Robredo garnered 15 million votes, the same amount of votes that Kiko got. So, ibig sabihin, they came out in force. So, revived ang strength and awareness ulit ng the yellow and the pink forces. Now, kung sino man sa kanila magtatakbo, kailangan talagang mag-unite sila. Kailangan nilang magdesisyon sino sa kanilang apat ang karapat-dapat tumakbo bilang Pangulo. Kasi kung di mo makuha ang pagkapangulo, kung dalawang tatakbo, hati na kaagad yan. So it doesn't make sense for them. I think they are mature enough to acknowledge kung sino among them ang talagang magiging representative or tatakbo bilang presidente sa 2028. Ako, very confident ako that they will unite under one candidate. Kung sino yung kandidato yun, sila ang dapat mag-uusap. At hindi ako naniniwala magkakaroon ng dalawang kandidato ang mga Pinklawan forces.
Okay, speaking of Pinklawan forces and Dilawan forces, sir, how about a unity or uniting with the Marcos administration? Because na-float na rin po ito dati, no? But given the nangyari sa elections, how do you suggest, even considering na makipag-unite po sa mga pwedeng with the Marcoses?
Depende kung sino yung kandidato kasi hindi natin alam kung sino magiging kandidato ng grupo nila Pangulo Marcos eh. Ito ba kung tatakbo ba si Raffy Tulfo, will he be the one and will he be acceptable to the yellow forces? So, but again, politics is addition. Siyempre, although mathematically, posible silang mag-unite, pero pag-uusapan dyan yung values din. Ano ba yung values natin? Do we have common values that we can run on? What are the advocacies that we can agree on? And then, of course, there's a power sharing. Ano bang who will be the presidential candidate, who will be the vice presidential candidate? All these things will have to be considered. But the Marcos forces have really been decimated to a certain degree. They were only able to get 5 out of 12. So, in effect, if you're looking at the Duterte forces, ang boto ng Duterte would be the votes of Bato. Si Bongo is the votes of the Duterte plus his malasakit vote. So we don't know we don't know even kung assuming ma-acquit si Vice President Sara, si Bongo ba tatakbo at si Sara tatakbo, mahadi ang Duterte forces, will they agree to isang common candidate? Tapos sila Marcos forces naman, kung si Raffy Tulfo ang kandidato, they have to shore up the Marcos forces. Although may advantage sila, may administration machinery, no? But we've seen administration candidates losing also. So it makes sense for the Marcos forces to consider aligning with someone else. Definitely with not the Duterte forces, possibly with the yellow and the pink forces. But again, that's open to a lot of discussions. But that's why they have to come up with a decision early on kasi honestly, medyo existential threat din talaga itong sa situation of Marcoses because if Vice President Duterte wins, expect like President Trump a revenge tour. Kasi hindi pwedeng sa nangyari alam naman natin na medyo galit na galit si Vice President Duterte. Hindi natin, the probability is they will go after the Marcoses. So, kaya existential threat yan sa mga Marcoses. No? So, they really have to make sure that whoever their candidate is should win. Yun ang malaking concern ng Marcos administration.
Okay, and babantayan po natin yan, yung mga susunod na political moves. Mahaba-haba pa po yung 2028, but magugulat na lang tayo, sir, na parating na tayo. But thank you so much, former Presidential Spokesperson Edwin Lacierda, for sharing your thoughts. Salamat po sa inyong oras, sir.
Maraming salamat, Tristan.
And we will continue to deliver just the facts and the news you need. Until our next Newsmaker, I'm Tristan Odalo.